Filaments, filaments, filaments. They're the story of the day. Despite a dip in solar activity, you can expect coronal mass ejections to continue. We'll tell you all about it and lots more on today's Daily Space Weather Show. By the way, thanks for tuning in. That's a 24-hour video from SDO. It features ionized iron in 193 angstroms and ionized helium in 304 angstroms. Let's take a brief tour of what we have in store. So you might see some huge plasma filaments up there. This one's called the Donna Marie plasma filament. There's another one in the southeastern limb that's also been named thanks to that viewer as well. This one down here is called the Kate Bush filament. Another huge filament has just risen right up here. So that one could use a name as well. More about that later in the video. And here is the southern hemisphere. Huge crown prominence down here in the southeast. It's looking pretty unstable. And you can expect this exciting type of activity to continue for a lengthy period of time indeed. Here's an even closer view of that southeastern filament. Not sure if that's one or two. I think that's actually two separate filaments. But at the moment, we'll call it one. I don't know. Let's take a look at sunspots briefly before we move on. Oh, one more thing. This area up here in the northwest still poses some significant risk for solar flare, although we have seen a decline in solar flaring activity and sunspot activity and the radio flux, a general decline in solar activity over the past 24 hours. So before we take a look at sunspots and volcanoes and earthquakes and do the rest of the Daily Space Weather Show, help support the channel by visiting our paid affiliate links. One of them is the Hemp Lucid links. So check that out. You'll find a link below the video as well as on our homepage at smashomash.com. So check the description if you're in the market or if you've never tried the Hemp Lucid products. I'm a big believer in the Focus Mushroom Gummies, also the Stress Mushroom Gummies. Not a fan of the Sleep Mushroom Gummies, but some people swear by them. You can also find immune stacks and lots of other great products like CBD creams and topicals. If you haven't tried the lip balm, they make great gifts. So great that many of them are out of stock. Even CBD for your pets there. You can also find our Amazon store. One of the features is spaceware. Today's featured product is battery backup, since there have been some power outages around the East Coast. How about an Anchor battery backup? That could power your whole house. It is a significant battery-based generator. Check it out. It's in our camping supplies. Lots of different products there on the Amazon store at amazon.com/shop/smashomash. Again, links on the homepage, which is smashomash.com, and welcome to the Neo-Renaissance. We launched our own website back in February of 2019 and built a huge web ring for people just like you. So visit us on social media, press that share button. If you haven't pressed like, please do so. And leave us a comment, whether nice or derogatory. You're not going to hurt my feelings on social media. So here is yesterday plus today, the SDO continuum is what we're showing here. And we do have 2 or 3 likely new sunspot groups to get named today. So they are, one of them is this one down here in the southeast. And I think there is another one. Don't worry, we'll show you high-res imagery of that before we get to our meteorology segment. Here's the colorized magnetogram, also depicting yesterday plus today to date. That would be August 8th. In its entirety, and August 9th so far. Let's see what's going on volcanoes. Stromboli had a sudden eruption, an above-average one, while the Icelandic eruption on the Fagradalsfjall Rift Complex has been dropping off. So seismic activity dropping off. Also, no new lava showing up there. So it looks like Fagradalsfjall has chilled out as the lava is crusting over there. Probably still not an appropriate place to take a stroll. Mount Mayon in Philippines is producing an unknown size volcanic ash plume. Please don't fly your hang glider or your home-built kit helicopter over Mount Mayon. Mount Ibu exploding, flight level 070. Semeru is exploding, flight level 150. It's a 15,000-foot ash plume. Santiaguido, mild explosive activity. No indication of the ash plume size there in Guatemala. However, Fuego exploding, producing a 15,000-footer. Volcanic ash has dissipated in Colombia over Nevado del Ruiz, fertilizing the landscape, making for tasty coffee and perhaps other plant-based products. Sabancaya exploding in Peru. That's the largest volcano in the world right now in terms of its eruption. 23,000-foot ash plume over Sabancaya. It's a flight level 230. Not sure about Ubinas in Peru. Not sure if that's erupting or not. And next we'll look at seismic activity. So there is the past 90 days. Very steady 7 magnitude quakes here for the past 90 days. Very well spaced out there. Looks like a systematic series of 7 magnitude earthquakes. And for our spaced out viewers, here comes the earthquake rundown. A little earthquake swarm there in the Caribbean. If you're located there, tell Peter Schiff we said hi if you're on the Isle of Puerto Rico. And let's see what else is erupting. There was a let's see what else is shaken, that is. There's a 5.5 at Tanzania. That was yesterday afternoon. A fairly rare place for an earthquake, although that is the African Rift Zone, that area between Madagascar and the African continent. The African Rift Zone, seeing a 5.5 magnitude quake at 15:31 Universal Time yesterday. There were 3 nearly 6 magnitude quakes over the past 24 hours. One of those was a 5.9 at Tonga. That was at 18:38 yesterday evening. Aftershock there at Tanzania of a 4.8 magnitude. And we also had a 5.3 at Philippines. And another earthquake coming in here as we do the video. Oh, okay, it updated, but there was no new quakes. There was a 5.6 at Guam. That was at extreme depth, over 450 kilometers. 9:20 this morning was the time of that one. And 9:33 Universal Time was the timing of this 5.8 in Mexico. That was also at some depth, 110.5 kilometers for that Mexican quake at 9:33 Universal Time this morning. And returning to our space weather portion, here's the closest star for the past 24 hours, and thanks for stargazing with us. Let's add 211 angstroms to that, and then go over some space weather stats. There's 211 angstroms, along with 171 from SDO. Pretty sweet imagery. And the 10.7 centimeter radio flux now all the way down into the 150s. So again, a significant dip here in solar activity. Don't expect that to continue. We have not yet seen solar maximum. So here is the 1-year graph, the radio flux here depicted by that black line, and it's actually 159 solar flux units, so just under 160 there. The red line is the sunspot number. Next, looking at the space weather enthusiast dashboard here, and NOAA's not expecting any sort of space weather storms, geomagnetic activity, etc. We are expecting the possibility of a minor CME strike sometime tomorrow on August 10th. So that one not forecasted by NOAA. Let's see what NASA has to say. And if you've never seen NASA's event viewer, you just click Events from the Integrated Space Weather Analysis Center, click Ensemble. We like to show the dynamic pressure. And we don't see any additional events there either. So sometimes there are disparities in the forecast. Yesterday we had a complete dud, by the way. We were expecting a minor CME impact as that Enlil spiral showed yesterday. It never really happened. No CME impact at all. There was a little bit of a shift in the field. That was probably the CME brushing past Earth's magnetosphere. And let's take a look at Earth's magnetic moment from space. Here are the past 4 hours of a geomagnetically calm planet here. And make sure you leave us a comment if you're viewing the video from another timeline, universe, multiverse, planet, spaceship, plane of existence, etc. We're always interested in biologics viewing our videos. There are the past 4 hours of Earth's magnetic moment from space. Here are the past 4 hours of Earth's magnetic moment from the ground. This map depicts magnetic flux density and is great at showing you the likely locations for aurorae when they do occur. Again, quite calm conditions here for the past 4 hours. Now that we've let that play through, let's take a look at the planetary K index. An average of global geomagnetism, KP2, is the current situation, as reported from the Smash News Network Space Weather Station. Next, the real-time solar wind. We show these things in order so people like you can understand how the data relates to the other data as we bring you the most comprehensive space weather in the known universe. Current conditions are 373 kilometers a second for the solar wind velocity. Solar wind density here a little bit up from yesterday at 8.79 protons per cubic centimeter. Again, yesterday's expected CME impact was a dud, and like NASA, we do err on the side of caution, and we over forecast a little bit because that's just we want to make sure that astronauts are getting good forecasts for space weather. And if you're an astronaut viewing the channel, please leave us a comment. Next, the GOES magnetometers here. And nothing to write home about there. Pretty smooth activities there in terms of the magnetic fields measured from the geosynchronous near equatorial orbits of the GOES 16 and GOES 18. And let's take a look at the heliospheric current sheet. Super important, the top view ecliptic plane field plot shows us the polarity of the solar plasma. And what do we have? We've got some undulations happening there. Earth is in a South Pole current sheet here at the moment. And if we bring that back, that North Pole current sheet there being consumed, subsumed, or you could say covered up. But that is the situation. Those measurements come from 51 ground-based magnetometers and magnetometers on stereo A and stereo B, which are practically in line with the Earth. You can see these orange lines very close together there. Those are stereo A, B, and the Earth's ground-based magnetometers. South Pole current sheet looks like it's going to continue here for the foreseeable future. Next, our line of sight field plot. Here the solar B field is depicted in blue, North Polar field in green, South Polar field in red. And it looks like South Pole oriented coronal holes have won the battle, the tug of war that's been going on in the northeast. And indeed there you can see a better defined coronal hole here showing up looking like it is of South Pole orientation. So there is the latest image from our line of sight coronal hole plot. And let's switch over to our coronal hole wavelength. We've got some close-ups of that. Let's subtract the 171 angstroms to show 211 by itself. So we may see a solar wind intensification associated with this coronal hole. That'll be about 2 to 3 days from now. And by the way, you can expect an uptick in coronal hole activity. Why? Because we've had a coronal hole shortage. So statistically speaking, it's coming. A big uptick in coronal holes. We've really had a shortage of them for the past year or so. And that's not going to continue, folks. So let's take a look at this well-defined coronal hole here. There it is, of South Pole orientation up there in the northeastern limb. What evil lurks in the heart of coronal holes? The Smash Team knows. That's a reference to an ancient radio show known as The Shadow, by the way. A shout out to The Shadow. And let's move on to sunspots. Some people think counting them is very important. I find coronal holes to be more important, but that is neither here nor there. And there is the sunspot situation. So I think we're going to have 2 new named groups today. They are small. They are in the eastern limb. We'll show high-res imagery of those later in the video. At least when we did show prep, it looked like there were 2 new sunspots there. They are known to change rapidly. And let's take a look at our sunspots here in 1600 plus 1700 angstroms. Once again, there still is a significant possibility of large solar flares in the northwestern limb up here, and that's really the main place to expect to see major activity. Let's talk energetic particles, as we have a solar energetic particle event continuing here. And before we do that, let's show the grayscale. Let's show the grayscale. So there is the SDO continuum in gray. So there's 1 new group there. And I think there might be 1 more. Again, we'll show that. We'll show high-res images of that before we do our meteorology segment. And there's the solar energetic particle event. Check it out, folks. Significant solar energetic particle event continues. And those solar protons are causing continued polar radio blackouts. So solar energetic particle events, you can expect those to continue for years. As solar maximum gets closer and closer, these things become more likely because large solar flares become more likely, and these relativistic particles traveling at a significant percentage of light speed will become more and more common, most likely in the coming year or 2. So there you can see the polar radio blackouts mainly at the north polar region, and you can see some equatorial radio blackouts. Those are the ionosphere being attenuated by solar flares. So don't get them mixed up, folks. Coronal mass ejections are primarily protons. Solar flares are photons of the X-ray variety. So those X-rays, they do attenuate the ionosphere around the equator. As you can see there, that blue region. The solar protons circling Earth's polar magnetic field lines are causing radiation to be emitted as well at the poles. So there you go. There's that continued north polar radio blackout. That could keep going on for a couple of days. Doesn't look like it's subsiding yet. Next, solar flares, and they've been diminishing here. So if you look at the 7-day graph of the GOES X-ray flux, there was a peak featuring 2 X-class flares here in the past week. Since then, again, sunspot number has dropped, as well as the radio flux and so forth. It is a general drop in solar activity. So let's show some more SDO videos here. There's 94 plus 134, 94 plus 131 angstroms. another portion of the extreme ultraviolet bands of the electromagnetic spectrum. And the most recent C-class flare, I believe, was from this group down here. So here's a little closer view of the last 24 hours. And let's take a look at what's going on overhead. Over my head. If you want to make your own star chart, feel free at skyandtelescope.org. That's the one we use. No affiliation there, no official endorsement. Just put in your location, click the Now button. And by the way, we've got images of Jupiter and the Moon on the Instagram page. So if you haven't checked us out over on Instagram, different types of posts over there, mainly fitness, lifestyle, and just for fun. And a great view of the pre-dawn sky this morning. The sun just a few degrees off the horizon there over Lehigh Valley, Pennsylvania. You can find us all over the internet at Instagram, on Facebook, and all over the place at Smash-O-Mash. Thanks to everybody who presses share, presses like, etc. And if you don't like, then make sure you unsubscribe from the channel promptly. That will not hurt our feelings any more than derogatory comments. Derogatory comments, we love. We find them absolutely hilarious. Next, your solar system forecast. This is where things are today as we approach the August new moon. Here's where things will be on the 16th. It looks like sometime around the 16th or 17th will be new moon. And let's take a look at coronal mass ejections. But before we do that, oh, I almost forgot. We're bringing back cosmology segments, folks. So, of course, the perspective that I bring to heliophysics is that I'm interested in the implications of heliophysics on cosmology. And we pulled out the cosmology segments, and guess what? They're back. So part of that is our astronomy photo of the day. There's some comet dust for you, the Perseid meteor shower. That's apod.nasa.gov. That was taken during the 2018 Perseid's meteor shower, and if you've got imagery of it yourself, highly recommend time-lapse imagery, which I mess with a little bit, but... And again, let's move on to cosmology here, because there are some interesting articles that you might be wanting to read here from phys.org. So this one is about an eclipsing binary. An eclipsing binary is when you have two stars, one of which is passing, well, they're passing in front of each other as they orbit each other. This is actually a very fast orbiting eclipsing binary. These stars are around the size of the sun, and they share a plasma sheath. So that is known as J003106.8 plus 313347. A little bit of an odd eclipsing binary there. Having a photometric study of that done, it is located at about, I think it's 6,000 light years distance, 4,900 light years distance. So that's an article on phys.org about that eclipsing binary system. Yes, those are two stars orbiting each other at a very close distance. Also, a great view of a globular cluster here from the Hubble Space Telescope. So the Hubble Space Telescope, I remember in the mid-90s when it launched, it was absolutely amazing. And we've got two more great recently launched space telescopes in the James Webb and the Euclid. Globular clusters are like little mini galaxies inside of a galaxy. They tend to be, well, sometimes they're dominated by blue stars, as this one is. They are orbiting a common center of gravity there, and that is a very dense region of the Milky Way. It is known as NGC 6562. That article there about Hubble getting a glimpse of that globular cluster. And Euclid imagery is now coming out. So the Euclid Space Telescope, it is taking images in near infrared and in visible light. So that is the near infrared, I believe. And you can find links to other test images there from Euclid. So there are some more maps of Euclid, another very high resolution space telescope. Another article there from phys.org, and let's move on to look at coronal mass ejections. So that's pretty important stuff. You can expect coronal mass ejections to continue here. The likelihood of CMEs in the coming 24 hours is 99.9%. It's just this side of 100%, as nothing is assured in space. However, with the number of filaments that we have, remember, folks, you don't need solar flares or even sunspots to see coronal mass ejections. They happen all the time, even at solar minimum. We even figured out how to forecast them. We just stopped doing it because it didn't get us any views on YouTube. So, oh well. Anyway, there are some frames from yesterday. That's 104 frames from GMU, George Mason University. We don't anticipate those coronal mass ejections depicted to be earthly directed. Here are some frames from today, and an additional 25 frames. And unfortunately, there is some old data here. So there could be another CME to cover here. Keep in mind it is Wednesday, so we will do a live stream later this afternoon at 2 p.m. We've moved it up once again today. So now, here's a CME that we paused the video here at 12:42 for the LASCO C3 and 10:24 for the LASCO C2. I just want to briefly show you this. So a great example here of a CME that has a secondary filament here. So this here, you can see this filament is like a sort of an incomplete filament. This one's very thick. On this side it's very thin, and then there's a second filament sort of in there, almost like a core, but not quite. So one of the many irregular type of CME shapes that you'll see. And that if that impacted Earth, for example, you'd be able to see those parameters in the, perhaps in the magnetic fields. Also, the solar wind density would change as those density gradients happen. So coronal mass ejections, they take all sorts of different shapes and forms. There's a great one coming out of the northern polar region. And quite a bit of outflow here. So there could be some earthly directed ejecta there. Earthly directed ejecta. We'll take a better look at it here in a minute. First we'll show stereo A, which is looking jacked up. Stereo A, folks, it's looking jacked up. I don't know what's up with it. It's showing some erroneous looking data. So here's stereo A over on the left, and that looks like some kind of crazy artifact. I don't know what's up with that. It's not Nibiru. It is not Nibiru. So not sure what's going on with stereo A. Hopefully it is not damaged like stereo B, which its coronagraph has been out since like September of 2014 or something like that. So we are seeing the CME on there. And then these oddities here, if you've got theories as to what that is. That strange brightening there around the edge of the coronagraph, I'm not sure. Maybe it's reflection? I don't know what's up with it. It is suboptimal. So let's pull up our custom coronagraph movies. And you can see a lot of snow. You see all that snow there? Those look like relativistic particles striking the aperture there out at Lagrangian point 1, the location of the SOHO spacecraft. So certainly some fast-moving particles there making their way through the solar system. Let's take a closer look here to see if any of these coronal mass ejections are likely to have earthly directed components. All right, so this major one out of the southeastern limb looks like it is not on the Earth side of the solar disk. So we don't see any limb darkening or plasma motions there. If you move in even closer, 193 angstrom from SDO will help to see any limb darkening, and we don't see that. So, but lots of snow on the aperture there, so relativistic particles are blasting through the solar system at the moment. And let's move down just to 193 angstroms by itself before we move on to filaments. And again, the filament situation is quite awesome indeed. So that's how we started the video out. Let's briefly show that again. How you like them apples? So huge filaments here, and lots of them. Check out the imagery from El Teide, Spain. That, my friends, foes, and neutrals, is, well, really, I mean, I would say that there are 4 significant filaments. So if you want to name filaments after living people, don't name this one, that's the Donna Marie. Don't name this one, that's the Kate Bush. Do name this one, and do name this prominence. I've got ideas, and if nobody names them, I'm going to name them. Where? On X, the platform formerly known as Twitter. This filament over here is pretty dense as well. That one looks like it's ejected, though. Check it out. It's there, and whoops, now it's gone. So here's the colorized imagery from El Teide, Spain, or the in-color imagery. And the reason we show the other imagery is because this doesn't show prominences. So, but you can see this filament down here. That one could definitely use a name. It is a prominence. And this one up here is certainly quite large and quite charged. Solar plasma. It is charged particles. Think of them as tiny atomic scale magnets. Again, if you want to name filaments after living people, make sure you join us over on Twitter, aka X. And here's how to do it. Just follow the hashtag. Name that filament. Name them after living humans. And what happened? I pressed something I didn't mean to press there. By the way, the white noise that you hear on these videos is from the site we just showed. So, again, no affiliation there. It is not an official endorsement. However, that is intentional. It's designed to sound like the -D Enterprise at warp from Star Trek The Next Generation. So name that filament after living humans over on X. And here are the past about 2.5 hours from the GOES 16 SUVI. And check out that prominence. That is a massive plasma filament. When they hang off the edge of the solar disk, we call them a prominence, but it's the same feature, folks. Also some big filaments over here. So like I said at the beginning of the video, filaments, filaments, filaments. And let's move to bonus features. Satellite charging hazards are minor of the surface charging variety here over the Eastern Pacific. Shouldn't cause any major communications breakdowns. GOES electron flux here at sort of a moderate to high range over the past 24 hours. There's the 1-year graph to put the electron flux into context. That is from solon.info if you want to check it out yourself. solon.info/solar. And here's the forecast model. NOAA expecting a slight increase in the electron flux there. No argument from me. Next, the F layer of the ionosphere. Feel free to pause the video on this frame if you're not familiar with the temperatures of the atmosphere, the chemical concentrations, and electromagnetic radiation penetration. And it's back. We didn't show it yesterday because it was unavailable, but today, there you go. There's the F layer of the ionosphere for the past day. That's Australian Government Bureau of Meteorology. And we'll also show the anomalygram. because if that looks Greek to you, it certainly looked Greek to me when I first started looking at it. As if you don't immerse yourself in the data, folks, you won't understand the data. Science. We often end up with answers to questions not asked. So there you go. There is the previous day depicting anomaly in megahertz from the 30-day median. So that's what's going on at about 300 kilometers of altitude, the bridge between Earth and space. And there's the latest image, 11 o'clock universal time ionogram and 11 o'clock universal time anomalygram. Next is total electron content. It'll show you the most likely places to see GPS errors as free electrons cause signal refraction. We'll leave that in the small size, the total electron content forecast. So fairly organized here, which is what our regular viewers would probably come to expect. With these moderate to high levels of electron flux, we typically see more organized total electron contents. And last but not least, we'll show the total electron content anomaly from the 10-day average over North America. And things are looking pretty normal here once again, like they were yesterday. So that's about it when it comes to space weather, except for one more thing. The high resolution intensitygram and colorized magnetogram. So there's the refresh. There's the refresh. Do we have new sunspots up here? I don't think so. Those are not sunspots. However, down here, there are indeed two new groups. So let me show you those in magnetogram as well. There you go. They are small. This first one looks like it's already beta-gamma class, at least. Maybe even beta-gamma delta class. Let's go back. So there's a leading South Pole umbra. We've got trailing North Pole umbrae. That is beta-gamma delta class. This one right here. This one down here is wait for it, alpha class. All right, maybe beta-gamma class. So those are the two new regions that could get names today if they stick around for over 12 hours. And here's the full disk rockback. Now this sunspot here is beta-gamma delta class as well. And this one down here has produced some flaring, so that one is... Well, let me take a closer look. All right, let's see here. That's beta-gamma delta class. So that has been the most significant flare player for the past 24 hours, this group right down here in the south. And it's time to go to meteorology. And let's take a pause here for station identification. Welcome to the Smash News Network, least busted name in news. Here comes our meteorology segment. We're going to start out with something very, very scary to very, very many people. Available on nullschool.net is the surface carbon dioxide concentration map. And actually, interestingly enough, the light areas are the high concentrations. So if you look down here around Southern California, concentrations of 448 parts per million. The dark regions are lower CO2 concentrations. So for example, northern Siberia, only 383 parts per million. So there is the earthly carbon dioxide map. And I will not attempt to correlate this map with surface temperatures. There's Antarctica's quite steady carbon dioxide concentration at the surface level. And let's switch to our wind maps. So here you go. There are surface winds for the eastern world. Another typhoon-like system here forming in the western Pacific. Here are the jet streams of this side of the planet. Jet streams of the west. We've got quite a coherent jet stream here over the east central U.S. and a convergence happening in the North Atlantic. Here are the surface winds of the western world, the Americas, and shout out to our viewers from all around the planet. Congratulations on realizing the channel exists. Surface winds for the central world depicted here, and there are the jet streams. Quite meridional in their flow here over Western Europe. Looks like cold times for France at the moment. Continuing right along here to show our drought intensity map, one of the many features of windy.com. We've got some significant droughts here, especially in Wisconsin and northern Illinois, also Louisiana and Mississippi, surprisingly, showing some extreme drought conditions. Also, Colorado and New Mexico showing some extreme drought conditions. Anyway, that's the map from Check Globe. And let's check the globe on the west side of the planet. There you go. This is clouds and fog for the Americas. Pardon the lack of propaganda, fraud, and nonsense on the channel. I know it sells. And yeah, we only occasionally put up clickbait titles and thumbnails. And next we'll show a smoke map. Here is firesmoke.ca's forecast for smokage. Smokage. Not all that smoky. Let's move on to our weather.gov map. So I'm just going to scroll down and show you the key here briefly. Hawaii, they're getting hit with all kinds of weather. Heat advisories around the Gulf Coast. And some strong storms here in the central U.S. Here come some forecasts. We'll start out with the jet stream forecast, represented by the 250 millibar winds. So that's the jet stream situation for the next 72 hours based on the GFS model. Here's a 72-hour GFS temperature anomaly forecast in degrees Celsius. And here is the pressure and precipitation forecast, GFS 72-hour. Next is, I don't know, Lightning Mapper. That's what's next. And that looks lousy. Let's refreshingly refresh it. There we go. There's the past like 10 hours of lightning. Heaviest lightning here over Kansas. Hopefully nobody has been transported to Oz with the associated systems. So here's the current lightning map from lightningmaps.org. Highly recommended next time you hear thunder. If you've never checked it out, lightningmaps.org. It's a good time, folks. It is powered by blitzaltung.org. And we do have some lightning here around Springfield, Missouri, otherwise known as Springfield, Missouri. North of Joplin, there's a pretty active cell there. Wow. That is serious. That likely contains things like damaging wind and hail. So we'll give you an idea of how that's going to move and get this video onto your screens, as it may seem like a live stream, but it was actually recorded. By the way, if you enjoy the content, don't just press like and subscribe, support the channel. Yeah, financially, because we'd like to keep it in existence. So you can thank the Smash Team members, especially Gold and Silver Smash Team members. Smashomash.com/Smash Team is our custom paywall. You can get additional content over there. And we put up some content just last night at smashamash.com/smashteam. We also send out email notifications since people complain about not getting notifications from certain video hosting websites. Today's featured product, another barely paid endorsement. Today's featured product is the one I'm wearing, which is right there, one of our first pieces of merch, which we actually reintroduced. It is, oh, here it is. It is a souvenir. And congratulations on surviving a global scamdemic so far. You can get the product on various different things. Whether you want a dog mat or a pet blanket. How about the sleeveless top? It's got it very large. We've even put it on a mini skirt and a bath mat, even a clock. Makes great gifts for your favorite COVIDiot, perhaps. Or maybe you just want a souvenir. And congratulations on surviving so far. You're doing a fine job. And a slow clap for all of the bureaucrats who have made it less likely. Well done. Way to crash the global economy. Thanks so much for your wise governance. Smashamash.com is the homepage. And welcome to the Neo Renaissance. It's an exciting time for heliophysics and cosmology. Did you know that on October 1st, there is an important 10-year anniversary? An important 10-year anniversary. We'll tell you about it at a later time. In the meantime, visit us over on social media. And if you don't enjoy the content, press unsubscribe. That's not going to hurt our feelings either. So here are the final segments of the video. It's the U.S. Doppler radar map. And again, those are some serious storms there, moving almost due east. The main cells there are a little bit north of Springfield, Missouri here at the moment. It looks like St. Louis is going to get hit pretty hard. Also, Louisville is in the crosshairs for that storm. So here is the full 50-state view. Here is the lower 48 view. Here is clouds and fog, despite it being dark over half the country. Shortwave radiation will show that anyway. And there is water vapor. And we're getting some cold air from Canada blowing down here into Pennsylvania. It was quite chilly this morning. Again, see those pre-dawn images and images of the moon and Jupiter over on Instagram. Here's your recap, U.S. Doppler radar. Clouds and fog. And water vapor. Use it. When your Doppler's not clear, that'll clear it up. Especially if you understand atmospheric physics, and we hope you do. We hope you're able to forecast your Earth weather and your space weather. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you soon. And until this afternoon, may that solar wind be at your back.